Talking Mariners with Yahoo Sports Jordan Shusterman. He joins us on the Emerald Creek Casino Sportsbook hotline right now. Jordan, how's it going? Happy Wednesday.
Hi, guys. Good to see you as always. Happy to be here.
We are happy to have you, and I'm going to dive into kind of a weird topic to start. Now, normally having you on is awesome because we get to ask you about some other teams and the rest of the league, and I know we'll get to it, but Bump and I earlier were not just talking about how expectations have changed for the team, but how our expectations have changed for Cal Raleigh in particular. This was not someone who was a top 100 Mariners, baseball prospect. He was, I think, number 12 and then number 8 for the Mariners. And now I think that the average Mariners fan, Jordan, would say, oh, he's one of the most clutch hitters on this team. He's absolutely amazing. Has Cal Raleigh surprised you? When did you start to shift your expectations and shift your valuation of Cal?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that we've seen him kind of level up in a few different ways over these past few years. I mean, to me, I think what is so cool about the Cal Raleigh story, and there's a lot of kind of elements to what he has become that is remarkable, and obviously a testament to his hard work and what he has kind of become as a total player. But you just think about having a moment like that, in 2022. And as at that point, a player who was not a rookie, but I guess it was, just his second season. And he had a great season that year. He hits 27 home runs as a catcher. He's 25 years old, and you have all these great expectations. But when you have a home run like that, to send the Mariners to the playoffs, and it's like, well, it's not going to get better than this. And maybe from a singular swing, it won't ever get better than that, right? But at the same time, for him to just take that season and somehow improve every single year for a position that is as volatile and as challenging as there is. This is the position where the production is supposed to fluctuate up and down from year to year, and that he's now on track to hit easily 30, if not maybe 40 home runs as a catcher, 30 homers in 3 consecutive seasons, is astonishing. And that's before you even get to what he has, of course, meant to this team defensively. So that is what is so amazing. To have this kind of consistency at this position is just frankly unheard of, certainly in the modern game.
We were talking about how when I was growing up, I don't remember Kobe missing a free throw. I just don't.
It never happened.
Never happened. That's how I feel when Cal is in the batter's box in a clutch situation. I just feel like he's gonna get it done. But I want to ask you about a young arm. Man, the first time we saw him, it didn't look great for young Emerson Hancock, and they sent him down and brought up Luis F. Castillo, and we're wondering, okay, when's this young man going to be ready? And his last few outings, he's looked good. What are you seeing out of him? How has he been able to kind of get better as the starts have come around?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned him because, giving 6 solid innings last night against what we know to be a pretty good A's lineup. This is not the A's of the past where you're looking at the A's on the schedule and you're like, all right, well, we can, take care of business there. Maybe that's, one of the easier starts you have on the schedule, especially when they would go to Oakland, with Pitchers Park and those lineups are not very good. This is a very different situation now. I think what's been really cool to watch with Emerson is him figuring out what works for him, right? I mean, you can always wish that pitchers are going to have the wipeout stuff. They're going to strike out 10 guys a game. And the reality is that's just not his thing. And maybe, down the road, he does find a pitch that can kind of get him some more consistent swing and miss. But the reality is he's finding ways to succeed now with, listen, it's not like he's going up there throwing 88. I mean, this isn't the Kyle Hendricks situation, but he understands that he needs to pitch to contact. He needs to put the ball on the ground. He needs to get a lot of, weak contact to enable him to go deep into games. Now, sometimes that is going to result in some ugly outings where he is allowing a lot of hard contact and maybe some balls go over the fence. But if he can throw enough strikes and if he can mix enough, like I've said, I mean, the Mariners fans have been so spoiled with the kind of pitchers that they've been having that for Emerson Hancock, for the struggles that he's had initially and sometimes not looking as dominant as some of these other guys, it's like, oh, well, what's going on? Why isn't this guy awesome? He was a first round pick. But I think he's kind of finding himself, and at a time when the team really needs it, without Logan Gilbert. So I think it can't be, you can't give him enough credit for what he's kind of settled into.
I'm a big fan of Baseball Barbiecast. It's an excellent podcast. You guys had an episode recently. Do you call it baseball golf, or is it just standings golf? Standings golf?
Yes.
So for anyone, just a very quick explanation of the concept.
Sure.
The goal, like golf, is to get the lowest number possible, and you get the lowest number possible by successfully in early May, choosing the team that will finish in that place in the division.
Yes.
So you guys, you go through the first couple ones, and it'll be like, you choose the Rockies to finish last, right? Because you get, you get 0 points. They stay in last place, so it's great. You guys can see where this is going. It becomes a little tougher when you get to more volatile divisions. Jordan, the Mariners in the AL West we're near the end of that episode for you guys because it was such a tough time. How did you guys kind of see it panning out, and what makes this division so tough to predict for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, some of it is relative to some of these other divisions where they're just teams that are basically going to finish either where they're at or multiple spots away. Whereas, again, with Seattle, like, there's a path where they have a very good season and they finish in third, which in the context of that game would be 2 points, and 2 points is really, really, really bad. You really don't want that. And so it's not necessarily saying that the Mariners have no shot. And by the way, I did end up picking them because it was like, listen, some of the changes that we've seen with this team and for how weak this division is, seemingly, maybe they do have a real shot to win it. At the same time, I just think there's so many moving parts, not just with Seattle, but with Houston having their struggles, with Texas maybe starting to finally turn it around, with clearly the A's being a better team than they have been in recent years. I just can't pretend like I know anything in this division. I do think it's going to end up being close. But they're right in it. Clearly, they've been in first place now for a while, and not that they've built this massive lead, but they have the pieces in place to go out and win this division, or at least finish in second, which for the point of that game would have me feeling totally fine.
All right, time for our weekly Julio report. 3 hits last game, first time since April that's happened. It seems like he's a bit more decisive. Like, he's making better swing decisions. He's making contact. He's not striking out at a high clip like we're used to seeing. What's his report card looking like?
Yeah. I listen, I knew. I was like, all right, here comes the Julio question, and this is a good time to do it. 5 straight games without a strikeout, which, I'm sure there's some people like rolling their eyes like, really? Are we really celebrating going a week without striking out? But for Julio, like, sure, like, absolutely. I mean, and that's not just a recent thing. I mean, his strikeout rate is at a career low. His walk rate is at a career high. His BABIP is at a career low. And so I know you're still looking at a batting average that doesn't look great, but I mean, I've kind of been saying this for a while, like, the underlying stuff still looks really, really good for him. And maybe this run recently is the sign that hot streak that we've grown so accustomed to coming in July or August or September, maybe that is coming sooner. But, the thing is with Julio, like, he hasn't had to do all of it. And I think that is what is most encouraging about this start for Seattle's offense, is it hasn't just been about him. Now, obviously, because he's the face of the team, when he strikes out in big spot, of course, it feels more significant. And he still has at-bats where he's, swinging at pitches that nobody should be. Of course, that's still happening. But like I've always said, if he's still giving you that Gold Glove defense in center and making a difference on the bases, he's on pace once again to be, a 4 to 6 WAR player, which any team in baseball would love to have in center field. And if he can kind of get going on a hot streak and combine that with what the rest of this lineup is looking like, now we're really starting to talk about a well above average offense, not just a good one.
The next time we have you on, it'll be a matinee game against the Yankees at T-Mobile. So we're going to be kind of in the middle of another series. So we were hoping we could lean on you for a little bit of a preview for both the Toronto Blue Jays and the Yankees. I know, Jordan, many Mariners fans are excited to see how Seattle's able to stack up against New York. Everyone here hates New York. And then everyone hates Toronto, and Toronto hates us. It's always a very contentious presence in the park. So 2 home series, 2 good clubs. Tell us what you're seeing with both of these teams.
Yeah, Toronto coming off a pretty brutal loss last night against the Angels, where Jeff Hoffman, who, I mean, before last night, was really one of maybe the only reliever who you could be like, yeah, he's been better than Andres Munoz. Like, he was really the only other guy where it was like, yeah, I mean, look at what he's been doing. He's been going multiple innings, and last night just didn't have it. And the thing about the Blue Jays, they just don't really have a lot of margin for error. The top of their roster is very talented, but their pitching, we just saw they signed a couple pitchers in Jose Urena and Spencer Turnbull. I don't know if Turnbull is going to be much of a factor in the near future here, but that is a roster with Scherzer still out. Like, when you catch them on the right day, it's a pretty good team, but they have just been struggling so much to produce from a power standpoint that I can't imagine that's suddenly going to start in Seattle. But maybe I'm wrong. They do certainly still have some good hitters there in Vlad and Bo, who I think, I know he's only got one homer, but I think Bo has been awesome, and I think he'll continue to be awesome. And Santander very slowly starting to heat up. He's been very disappointing so far. So Toronto's still a talented club. I think that'll be a good series. And then the Yankees, I mean, let's not overcomplicate it. You're dealing with a player who is in the midst of one of the greatest stretches in baseball history in Aaron Judge, and so how they choose to attack him, how they choose to pitch to him, that'll kind of be the whole thing, because the reality is right now the rest of this Yankees lineup isn't that good. I mean, yes, Paul Goldschmidt has been hitting it up for a high average, and Ben Rice has been a really nice story, although he's been a little bit more inconsistent recently, but Bellinger's been really disappointing, and there are still parts of that lineup that are not really producing. So it's going to be all about Judge, and as it should be. I think, baseball is a team game, but when you're playing at this level, he is absolutely the person you need to focus on.
We've been trying to figure out just the Dan Wilson effect, and it's hard for people to see this, how a skipper affects a game, right? And I think Vargas being out there for the second night in a row obviously was a good decision. He's still bringing heat there. There was a decision to ask Polanco to bunt late in the game. So those are the kind of decisions that pop up, when I'm trying to evaluate Dan Wilson. What's a decision that you absolutely loved so far, and what's a decision that you hate?
Man, I'll be honest, there have been a lot, and some have ended up working out great. I mean, even this first game against the A's, it did not look awesome with playing the infield in. If you're going for a double play, you're facing Jacob Wilson, who never ever swings and misses. Like, there have been some strange stuff. Now, the bullpen stuff is harder to evaluate on a day-to-day basis because you never know who's actually available. And is it worth it to continue to run Munoz into the ground the way that they really have in recent years in a series in May? And yeah, of course, it's an important game. You've had situations where it's like, why is Trent Thornton pitching another inning and he gives up a really deep fly ball that stays in the yard? Like, we've seen a lot of different things work really well and really not well. So I don't know. And the bunting, again, we're getting a little bit more of an old school approach. There have been a lot of situations where it seems like it's like, if this is your inning, this is your inning. Like, we're not going to go out there and do anything about it. That's just how it's going to work. When it's situations where it's like, why isn't Spire coming in? Why isn't? But then you also just have to remember the personnel. I mean, they're rolling out there. They have one lefty. Spire's been amazing, but he only has so many matchups that he can play. So, I mean, listen, is there one specific thing? There have been a lot. It's been a very different experience watching this team, and when it works out, it's cool, and when it's not, it's like, what is going on? Obviously, they're playing well in a lot of facets to the point where it generally hasn't cost them too much, but you have to hope it's something that the rhythm and the understanding of how these things are managed starts to become more clear, because in some cases it's just been a little bit some head scratching moments for sure.
I'm glad that Bump brought up Dan Wilson, not just because it's an interesting conversation to talk about a new manager, but when we put out a question for listeners on social media about, hey, what's the behind in 8 consecutive series wins, I think folks were like, oh, Dan Wilson, small ball. So we had Jay Buhner, who was on our morning show, Brock and Salk, who said, oh, it's small ball. And then Jeff Passan came on 2 days later and was like, what are you talking about? They're hitting bombs.
Yeah.
Like, how would you characterize this brand of baseball?
Yeah. I mean, again, like, when you see anybody bunt nowadays, because it is so rare,
right? Small ball.
It's like, oh, well, they're a small ball team. It's like, okay, well, that's clearly not the case. They're whatever, top 5 in homers, and it's, I mean, what it is. And by the way, I'll tell you, we recorded this morning. We did a whole segment on the Mariners offense because my co-host Jake Mintz was like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? Like, why? How is this possible? And so, you want to go into, when you have personnel changes on the coaching staff, you want to be like, oh, well, it's a different style. This is a different game plan. It's a different. I'm sure a lot of these things are involved. But then at the end of the day, like, whether it's credit to the heading coaches or not, you just have players playing at an extremely high level. You have J.P. Crawford playing like it's 2023 again. You have Jorge Polanco playing better than he ever has in his life and better than most players ever have in their lives. And so at this point, you have a confluence of players who clearly the Mariners believed in, which is why they haven't, I mean, that's not the only reason why they haven't gone out and added to it, but, there was a core here that you could understand, like, there are good players here. And last year, for long stretches, that was not happening. Those good players were not playing well. And so it was just like, what are you talking about? Now you have players that do have track records that are performing at high levels. That's Randy Rosarena. That's Jorge Polanco. That's Cal Raleigh. That's JP Crawford. That's Julio Rodriguez. Like that's a lot of guys that are playing well. You mix in some unexpected contributions from Leo Rivas here and there, and you end up with a pretty good offense.
Go listen to the latest episode of Baseball Barbie Cast. He is Yahoo Sports Jordan Shusterman. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.
See you next week.